I can say for certain that the Roaring Knights introduction was the most memorable part of playing Chapter 3 for the first time for me. It was crazy seeing the camera pan to their black figure and immediately knowing that it was the knight. They just had that aura to them. And I was up until 2 a.m. trying to beat the knight, despite knowing that I had to wake up at 6 that same morning in order to get a run-in with a friend. I felt horrible running with him because of the lack of sleep I got, but I did beat the knight, so it was worth it. There are about 1 million videos discussing the knight's identity and other aspects of the knight online, and we're not going to rehash all that today, because quite frankly, smarter people than me have tried. Plus, always bet on Papyrus Knight. Today we're taking a lighter route and analyzing why the Roaring Knights introduction and battle at the end of Chapter 3 was so frickin' cool, with some other thoughts and speculation of them and their plan at the end of this video. First though, I really gotta ask you to subscribe. It would sure help out a lot for a small channel like mine, and I try really hard to put out the best content I can. I think it's a pretty good deal. If you subscribe for free, I'll keep you entertained for a few minutes every week with a couple of videos. Now the introduction to the knight immediately hooks you when they slash Tenna and the camera pans to their figure. That 10 seconds or so of gameplay alone is so cool, and it already provides heaps of context to the knight. The short scene immediately tells the player that the knight is A, an extremely powerful being, and B, an extremely complex character, as it obviously is unique from any other Lightner we have seen in-game in both appearance and in motivation. The difficulty of the following battle is also a clue to the player about the Shadow Mantle, as it definitely made me think of how I could defeat the knight during my first playthrough. I hadn't got the Shadow Mantle my first playthrough, but the impossibility of the Roaring Knight battle was what really made me want to explore Chapter 3 and find out how I could beat this hard boss. The way the boss indirectly makes newer and less curious players interested in exploring Chapter 3 more in order to beat the knight is super cool. And speaking of super cool things about the boss battle, can we talk about the music? Toby Fox really outdid himself in the Chapter 3 and 4 soundtrack. In the tracks like Black Knife, Guardian, and Burning Eyes, he does a really great job at making tracks give off vibes such as fear and desperation, while also being epic and energetic battle themes. With the amount of hours I've spent on the knight fight, I really should be sick of the song Black Knife, but it is still a banger. Even when our battle with the knight ends, the epicness of the scene doesn't. We get a glimpse of the knight's plan once we defeat them, but the scene is just confusing enough that we really don't understand what they're doing. It's ironic that the introduction of the knight has led to more questions than answers in the Deltarune community. Why does it look like that? Was its goal to kidnap Toriel or Undyne? Why the hell is Chris working with the knight? Who else is working with the knight? Why did they take so long? You get the point. It seems we know less and less about the lore of the game as it goes on. For example, we now know that, for at least right now, the goal of the Roaring Knight is not to cause the roaring. So what is the goal of the knight? Well, let's look at the introduction of the knight again and try to figure out what that is. I've found 3 simple things that we know for sure about the knight's goals, and let me know if I missed anything in the comments below. 1. Chris is working with the knight. This is obvious because Chris deals significantly less damage to the knight when Susie and Ralsei are alive. Chris also creates the Dark Fountain for the knight at the start of the chapter, and if you defeat the knight actually knights Chris at the end of the battle. 2. The knight doesn't need to start the roaring right now. This is also obvious because if they wanted to, they could just go and stab the ground everywhere. So we know that the knight has more complex motives than this. 3. The knight's endgame requires some members of Hometown to be incapacitated. This is evidenced by how the knight kidnaps Undyne / plan to kidnap Toriel, depending how you analyze the scene. I believe that if Undyne was the knight's target all along, it would be because she would have access to the police badge code in the bunker, which both Chris and the knight obviously do not want us, the player, going in. Another reason why the Roaring Knight's introduction was so great is that Toby Fox put a lot of small details into the song Black Knife that Deltarune nerds like me can overanalyze. First, Black Knife shares a leitmotif with the song Burn in Despair from Undertale. That song was played during the second phase of the Azrael boss in the True Pacifist route, and could definitely suggest the knight has connections to Azrael. Black Knife also shares a leitmotif from the songs The Chase and The Door from Chapter 1. These further connect the knight to darkness and dark worlds in general. But let's be real, we could connect the knight to darkness by just looking at them. However, the biggest leitmotif connection in the song Black Knife is it having the girl next door leitmotif, the one commonly associated with Noel holiday. This is one of the main reasons people connect the knight to Death's holiday, along with the antlers on the helmet and the knight's sword looking like a baseball bat at the start of the fight. Now, I know I said I wouldn't theorize about the knight's identity, but I think that this and loads of other evidence not found in the end of Chapter 3 makes it clear that the knight has to be some form of December holiday. Not the same December holiday that became lost, but a different December holiday that got corrupted or transformed by darkness. That's the last I'll say of the knight's identity. That's not important to their introduction. I want to end with the question, what was the knight's plan with Toriel at the end of our battle? The knight looked like they were charging up a purple beam aimed at Toriel, but they didn't really do anything. Now that could be as simple as Susie interrupted them or the knight doesn't want to wake her up, but based off of how quickly the knight grabbed Undyne, who mind you is a very powerful monster, I am not totally convinced that the knight's plan was to kidnap Toriel. Now, right now, it definitely seems like that is the most plausible explanation for the knight's actions, and if I could bring up an idea that I've heard no one else talk about, I'd like to propose that before their battle with the Fun Gang, when the knight cast that purple beam from their hand onto Toriel, what if it was a sleep spell, similar to Noel's Sleep Mist or Ralsei's Pacify, in order to keep Toriel asleep during the following battle? This would lend credence to the idea that kidnapping Toriel was in fact the knight's end goal, as the knight could then kidnap them in their sleep. Maybe the knight wanted to kill two birds with one stone and kidnap both Toriel and Undyne. I really have no idea, and honestly, I'm out of my depth here. Feel free to drop any info you can think of in the comments below. Maybe their goal was to kidnap Undyne all along, or maybe I'm digging too deep into this. Hell, what if Undyne was never even part of the plan, and she was an unintended consequence of Chris slashing the tires to keep Susie at home? Hell, what even is Chris's plan in Chapter 3? Are they really working with the Knight, the entity that seemingly wants to capture their mom? I genuinely feel like I still know absolutely nothing about this game when I think about it for too long. Maybe I'll make a video with a basic summary of the plot later. That would probably be helpful for many people. I feel like if I keep on thinking about this right now, I'm going to end up as insane as a Shadow Crystal boss. Now, let's take a couple steps back and look at the Roaring Knight's introduction from a game design standpoint, and finally summarize the question, why was the Roaring Knight's introduction in battle so cool? In my opinion, it's for two reasons. 1. It had great atmosphere. When the Roaring Knight is revealed, you are genuinely shocked. Shocked that Tenagit swooned. Shocked by how odd they looked. Shocked by how difficult the battle is. And the great music is the cherry on top, because it really nails how powerless you can feel when facing the Roaring Knight. Secondly, it's because of the great storytelling. If a player is more familiar with the world of Deltarune, it makes the Knight fight even more great. The boss battle really makes you think more in depth on the story of the game and makes you ask questions. Questions that we've already looked at in depth. Who is the Knight? What are their goals? Why are they working with Chris? The Roaring Knight isn't just a hard battle for kicks. It really makes you want to explore the world more. And those two reasons are why it's really great and why it's my favorite moment in Chapter 3. Hey, we've reached the end of the video. Let me know what you thought of this topic or anything Deltarune or video game related in the comments below. I had to spend some time remembering how to beat the Knight so I could get footage for this video, but it was worth it in the end, even though the fight was pretty hard. It was super fun to talk about the most memorable moment of Chapter 3 for me in this video, and my next one will be about how RNG mechanics work in video games. I think it'll be a pretty good video, and I hope to see you there. You have a good one, and stay cool.